At AOC also in the news thanks to Greenpeace co-founder Patrick Moore. Now, during his segment with Fox and Friends, he explained why he called her a pompous little twit. He says her Green New Deal is silly and that the idea of a climate crisis has been manufactured and based on junk science.
Good morning. Nice to be here.
Okay, it sounds like you don't think her plan is a good one. What's your major problem?
You're the one.
With it?
Well, it's a silly plan. That's why I suggested she was a pompous little twit. Twit meaning silly in the British lexicon, and pompous meaning arrogant. And she really rubbed me the wrong way when she said she's the boss, because she can make up a proposal that's completely ridiculous and no one else did. And that is what's wrong about this. In fact, the whole climate crisis, as they call it, is not only fake news, it's fake science. There is no climate crisis. There is weather and climate all around the world. And in fact, carbon dioxide is the main building block of all life. That's where the carbon comes from in carbon-based life, which is all life on land and in the sea. And not only that, a little bit of warming would not be a bad thing for myself being a Canadian, and the people in Russia wouldn't mind a little couple of degrees warmer either.
But Patrick, you know, there are so many scientists who have come out and have said that climate change is real.
Yes, of course climate change is real. It's been happening since the beginning of time. But it's not dangerous, and it's not made by people. Climate change is a perfectly natural phenomenon, and this modern warm period actually began about 300 years ago when that little ice age began to come to an end. There is nothing to be afraid of, and that's all they're doing is instilling fear. Most of the scientists who are saying it's a crisis are on perpetual government grants. On one hand, they say the science is settled and people like myself should just shut up because they know what's right. On the other hand, they seem to keep studying it forever as if there's something new to find out. And those two things are completely contradictory. Carbon dioxide is actually a benefit to the world. I'm in Washington this week for a directors meeting of the CO2 Coalition, whose purpose, and you should take a look at the CO2 Coalition online because we have some of the top scientists in the United States and Canada on board, and we believe that carbon dioxide is entirely beneficial to both the environment, to agriculture and forestry, and to the climate of the Earth.
Patrick, I know you were president of Greenpeace in Canada, 7 years as a director of Greenpeace International. You founded this organization and then you left. Why were you one of the founders, and why did you decide to leave?
I was one of the founders as doing a PhD in the late 60s, early 70s in ecology. I was radicalized by the Cold War and the threat of all-out nuclear war and the emerging consciousness of the environment, and we did a lot of good things. We stopped nuclear testing in Alaska, we stopped it in the South Pacific, we saved the whales, and we stopped a lot of toxic waste being put into the ocean and the air. But by the mid-'80s, we had gained a lot of notoriety, and we were bringing in a lot of money, and we were hijacked by the extreme left, who basically took Greenpeace from a science-based organization to an organization based on sensationalism, misinformation, and fear.
That's former Greenpeace founder Patrick Moore talking a whole different story today.
But they don't support that either. So basically they are opposed to approximately 98.5% of all the electricity that we are using, and nearly 100% of all the vehicle and transportation and ships and planes energy that we are using. So when I tweeted the other day and had a huge response, over 3 million impressions on Twitter, when I said you don't have a plan to feed 8 billion people without fossil fuels, or get the food into the cities where it's needed. That requires large trucks. And there's not going to be any electric trucks anytime soon hauling 40 tons of food into the supermarkets, where the people in the cities probably think it originates in the supermarket. But it does not. It's coming from farms out in the country where a few million people are growing the food for all the rest of the population. And if we banned fossil fuels, first, agricultural production would collapse in a very short period of time. There's these things called tractors, and they use fuel. and all the other implements on the farm. And then there's the transportation. So when you have no fuel, how do you get the food to the center of New York, to Manhattan, where AOC is from? You don't. Then the people there will begin to starve, and that will spread out as a rot from the center of the metropolises all across the country, and half the population will die in a very short period of time. And as I also pointed out, there wouldn't be a tree left on this planet. Say this was a worldwide thing, because the United States isn't going to ban fossil fuels if no one else does. But say the Paris Agreement came into effect fully all around the world, and everybody banned fossil fuels, there wouldn't be a tree left on this planet, because that would be all there was for fuel for heating and cooking, as they did in the old days when there was hardly anybody on the planet compared to what there is today. So just that one point, never mind the insanity of banning aircraft and fossil fuel using vehicles.
Well, you just completely blown my mind. And
talking about it in a frame of social, racial, and economic justice, and a mobilization of our economy and our society at the scale of what we did during World War II.
The Green New Deal, how's that going to be different?
I think what we're calling for is a mobilization of our economy, of our society, on the scale that we haven't seen since World War II.
Like, this is the war, this is our World War II.
It's clear that AOC is being coached on absolutely every policy point she makes. And if this is not enough to give you pause, consider that the Green New Deal was drafted in one weekend by her staff. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez had zero to do with it. As far as I could find, she wasn't even in the room. Now, this is AOC's landmark legislation proposal. It essentially sums up her entire platform and lays out everything she wants to do in Congress. She didn't even participate in the drafting of the legislation. And again, these people aren't even trying to cover this up. They're proud of it. Again, AOC is a figurehead, a mouthpiece. The congressional seat is being operated behind the scenes. Old interviews show that the Justice Democrats initially declared that they wanted candidates of substance. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was a bartender. Now, who is more useful to an evil organization trying to take over Congress? A principled politician who happens to align with their views, or a pawn? A malleable innocent who they can manipulate, somebody completely ignorant of politics who must rely wholly on them to direct all her political positions, statements, and votes. AOC has had enough